Racist man punches black girl, but Ronaldo rushes to save her. How will this story turn out? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The city streets were alive with movement. People hurried to work, taxis weaved through traffic, and the sound of bustling life filled the air. Among the crowd was Sophia, a 12-year-old girl with a fire in her heart and a passion for football that burned brighter than anything else. She walked with confidence, wearing a worn-out football jersey, a small ball tucked under her arm, a gift from her late grandfather, who had always told her she was destined for greatness. She had been counting down to this day for weeks. Cristiano Ronaldo was in town, visiting a local stadium for a charity football event, and Sophia had one mission: to meet her idol. Her father, Marcos, walked beside her, smiling as she practically skipped with excitement. "You ready, Princessa?" he asked. "I was born ready, Dad." Sophia grinned, gripping her ball tightly. But just as they crossed the street, the moment took a dark turn. A middle-aged man in a business suit and loosened tie stepped in their path. His face twisted with disgust as he looked at Sophia. "You shouldn't be here," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. Sophia stopped in her tracks, confused. "What?" she asked. The man scoffed. "People like you, filthy, poor, you think you can just walk around like you belong?" Marcos took a protective step forward. "Excuse me," he said, his voice laced with anger. The man smirked. "I see your kind all the time, thinking you can just take up space meant for real people." Before Marcos could react, the man lunged forward and shoved Sophia, causing her to stumble backward onto the pavement. The ball slipped from her hands, rolling a few feet away. Gasps erupted from the passers-by. "Are you insane?" Marcos shouted, reaching for his daughter. Sophia, stunned, struggled to stand, but before she could get up, the man raised his fist, this time aiming directly at her. But the punch never landed. A blur of white shot across the street. Cristiano Ronaldo. With lightning-fast reflexes, Ronaldo grabbed the man's wrist mid-swing and yanked it back. The entire street fell silent. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Ronaldo's voice was firm, his grip unyielding. The man froze, his arrogance faltering. He had just tried to attack a child, and now he was face-to-face with one of the most famous athletes in the world. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Sophia, wide-eyed, stared up at her hero. Marcos clenched his fists, his protective instincts raging, but Ronaldo was already handling it. "You don't touch her," Ronaldo growled, his voice low and dangerous. The man stammered, I didn't mean." "Didn't mean to what?" Ronaldo cut him off. "Attack a kid? Hurt someone just because of their skin color?" The crowd exploded with boos and shouts of outrage. Security guards, alerted by the commotion, rushed toward them. Ronaldo released the man's wrist just as two officers grabbed him, hauling him away. As the racist man was dragged off, the crowd erupted into cheers, celebrating justice in real time. Ronaldo turned towards Sophia and knelt beside her. "You okay, Garada?" Tears welled in her eyes. You saved me." Ronaldo smiled warmly. "No one deserves to be treated like that, ever." Marcos placed a hand on Ronaldo's shoulder, his voice shaking. "Obrigado, Ronaldo." The football star shook his head. "No need to thank me. This shouldn't have happened in the first place." Then Ronaldo noticed the ball lying at his feet, the same one Sophia had dropped. He picked it up and spun it effortlessly on his fingertips. "You like football?" he asked, grinning. Sophia nodded eagerly. "Then let's go," Ronaldo said, offering her his hand. "Go where?" Sophia asked, still in shock. Ronaldo pointed toward the stadium. "You're coming with me." The crowd roared in approval as Ronaldo led Sophia toward the event. In just a few minutes, she had gone from being a girl shoved on the street to walking beside her idol. And she had no idea that her life was about to change forever. Sophia could barely process what was happening. Just minutes ago, she had been humiliated, pushed to the ground by a hateful man. Now she was walking alongside Cristiano Ronaldo, the greatest footballer in the world, as if she belonged there. The crowd followed them, some cheering, others pulling out their phones to capture the unbelievable moment. Social media was already exploding with videos of Ronaldo standing up for her. Within minutes, her story was everywhere. Her father, Marcos, walked behind them, still in shock. "Ronaldo, are you sure about this?" he asked hesitantly. Ronaldo glanced over his shoulder. Of course. If she loves football, she deserves to be here. Sophia felt her heart race as they approached the stadium entrance. Security guards stepped forward, confused. This wasn't part of the planned event. "Ella Estacamago," Ronaldo said firmly, leaving no room for argument. The guards exchanged glances before quickly stepping aside. The stadium loomed ahead. From inside, the deafening cheers of thousands of fans echoed through the tunnels. The energy in the air was electrifying. Sophia swallowed hard. Was this really happening? As they walked through the dimly lit tunnel, Ronaldo looked down at her football, the one he had picked up earlier. It was old, its colors faded from years of use. "You play a lot, nah?" he asked, casually spinning the ball in his hands. "Every single day," Sophia whispered. Ronaldo smiled. "Then let's see what you got." Sophia froze in place. "Me?" she squeaked. Ronaldo laughed. "Claro. What, you think I'd bring you all this way just to watch?" Before she could react, they stepped onto the field. The stadium erupted in cheers. Sophia's breath hitched. Thousands of people were watching. The roar of the crowd vibrated in her chest. She had never seen so many eyes on her in her entire life. The other players on the field, world-class athletes, paused their warm-ups, turning to see who Ronaldo had just brought onto the pitch. She could hardly move. Ronaldo noticed her hesitation. He bit down slightly, meeting her gaze. His voice was calm but firm. "Hey, forget about them. Just focus on the ball. Show me what you can do." Sophia swallowed her fear. She took a deep breath and nodded. Ronaldo tossed the ball gently to her feet. "All right," he grinned. "Let's play." Ronaldo took a few steps back, watching as Sophia positioned herself. The entire stadium was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The other players on the field, some of the best in the world, stood still, their attention locked onto the young girl who had just been attacked on the streets. Sophia felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was her one chance. If she hesitated now, she might never get another. Taking a deep breath, she let her instincts take over. She started dribbling the ball, her movements quick and precise. The ball was old and worn, but her footwork was undeniable. Ronaldo watched her closely, impressed. The challenge was in order. He took a step forward and applied light pressure, testing her reaction. Sophia reacted instantly, shifting her weight and cutting to the side with speed. The crowd gasped. She maneuvered past Ronaldo, keeping control of the ball like a seasoned professional. The stadium exploded in cheers. The moment wasn't just heartwarming anymore. It was something more. Sophia wasn't just a scared girl Ronaldo had defended. She was a player. She was talented. And she belonged on that field. The energy in the stadium shifted. What had started as a simple act of kindness was turning into something much bigger. Sophia wasn't just a girl who had been attacked and saved. She was a footballer. She was proving herself. Ronaldo signaled to a few of his teammates, inviting them to join in. They obliged, forming a small circle around Sophia. She looked up, realizing she was now surrounded by some of the best footballers in the world. Instead of panicking, she grinned. This was her dream, and she wasn't about to let fear hold her back. One by one, they challenged her, and one by one, she outmaneuvered them. She had been playing football since she could walk, training every single day on the cracked streets of her neighborhood. Her skills had been honed through struggle, not privilege. And now all that hard work was paying off in the most unimaginable way. The crowd erupted. Sophia, Sophia, Sophia. She could hardly believe it. Just minutes ago, she had been humiliated, told she didn't belong. Now, an entire stadium was chanting her name. Ronaldo finally called for a pause, clapping his hands as he approached her. In Crivel, he said, shaking his head in amazement, "Você joga como coração." Sophia beamed, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. She had given everything she had in those few minutes, and it had been worth it. Ronaldo turned to the coaching staff on the sidelines. "We need to do something for her," he said. One of the officials, a serious-looking man with a headset, nodded. "I think we already are." Moments later, one of the team coaches approached Sophia, bending down slightly to meet her at eye level. How would you like to be our honorary guest for the rest of the match, he asked. Sophia's eyes widened. Me? The coach chuckled. Yes, you. You'll sit with the team, experience everything up close. And if Ronaldo needs a backup, maybe you can step in, he joked. The stadium erupted in laughter and cheers. Sophia turned to her father, who had been watching everything from the sidelines, tears in his eyes. He nodded. "Vai, Princessa," he said softly. "This is your moment." Sophia could barely contain her excitement as she followed Ronaldo and the team to the bench. A staff member handed her an official team jacket, which was far too big for her, but she wore it with pride. She sat among some of the greatest players in the world, and she felt like she belonged. Meanwhile, the man who had attacked her was being escorted out of the stadium by security. His face was red with shame as the crowd booed him mercilessly. Reporters swarmed the area, eager to capture the disgrace of a man who had dared to harm a child. Social media exploded with footage of the incident. Within minutes, the man's face was everywhere, condemned by millions around the world. As the match resumed, Sophia sat in awe, watching as Ronaldo and his teammates moved with grace and power. Every time Ronaldo had the ball, the stadium erupted, and Sophia cheered louder than anyone. She felt connected to him in a way she had never felt with any other player. He wasn't just a football star. He was her hero. But as the game continued, Sophia's mind drifted back to what had happened earlier. The man who had attacked her. What had driven him to such hatred? She knew there were people like him in the world, people who judged others by their skin color or background, but she had never imagined she would experience it so directly. Her fingers tightened around the sleeves of her oversized team jacket. Ronaldo had stood up for her. He had shown the world that people like that man wouldn't win. And for the first time, she realized something important. She wasn't just a victim of racism. She was a fighter. When the final whistle blew, the stadium exploded into cheers. Ronaldo's team had won. The players ran onto the field, celebrating. But amidst the excitement, something else was happening. Reporters had gathered along the sidelines, and they were all looking at Sophia. As the celebration continued, Ronaldo approached Sophia, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Come with me," he said, offering his hand. Sophia hesitated for only a second before taking it. He led her toward the reporters, and as they saw her approaching, the cameras started flashing wildly. A journalist with a microphone stepped forward. "Ronaldo, what made you stop the game earlier to defend this young girl?" Ronaldo glanced down at Sophia, then back at the cameras. "Because she deserved to be defended." His voice was firm. "No one should be treated that way." Another reporter spoke up. "Do you think this incident will change anything?" Ronaldo nodded. "I hope so. The world needs to see that we won't stand for racism or hatred." Sophia is strong. She proved that today. Sophia looked up at him, her heart swelling. He was speaking about her as if she were someone important, someone who mattered. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt like she did. A reporter turned to Sophia. "Sophia, how do you feel about everything that happened today?" She hesitated. She had never spoken to so many people at once, let alone been on live television. But she took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. "I was scared at first," she admitted. "But then Ronaldo stood up for me, and the crowd stood up for me. And I realized that there are more good people than bad people in the world." The crowd behind her cheered at her words. One last reporter asked, "What do you want to say to other kids who might face situations like this?" Sophia thought about it for a moment. Then she looked straight into the camera and said, "Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong. You do. And if someone tries to bring you down, remember that there are people who will lift you up." Ronaldo smiled down at her. "Well said." The interview ended, and as they walked off the field together, Sophia felt like she had won something much bigger than a football match. She had won confidence. She had won hope. She had won a new future. As Sophia walked off the field, she could feel the energy of the crowd still buzzing behind her. People were chanting her name, waving, and smiling as if she were a superstar. She had never felt so seen before. It was overwhelming, but in the best way possible. Ronaldo stayed by her side as they made their way toward the tunnel. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Sophia took a deep breath. "Like I just lived a dream." Ronaldo chuckled. "Good. Because you're just getting started. As they reached the exit, Sophia saw her father standing nearby, waiting for her. The moment she saw him, she ran into his arms. Raphael held her tightly, closing his eyes for a moment. "You did amazing, baby girl," he whispered. Sophia pulled back, her eyes wide with excitement. "Ronaldo gave me his jacket, and I got to sit with the team, and the whole stadium cheered for me." The words tumbled out of her mouth in a rush. Raphael laughed. "I saw Princessa. I saw it all." Ronaldo smiled at their bond. He extended his hand to Raphael. "She's incredible. You should be very proud." That night, Sophia lay in bed, her body exhausted but her mind still buzzing. She stared at the ceiling, replaying the events of the day over and over. The way the crowd had chanted her name, the way Ronaldo had stood up for her, the way she had dribbled past some of the best players in the world. It all felt like a dream she never wanted to wake up from. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it, expecting messages from friends who had seen her on TV. Instead, her heart sank as she read the words on the screen. "You don't belong here. Stay out of our club." Before she could process it, another message popped up. "You got in because of pity, not skill. You don't deserve this." Sophia sat up, her fingers tightening around the phone. She had thought everything was behind her, that the nightmare of being treated unfairly was over. But here it was again, just in a different form. She hesitated before locking her phone and placing it face down. She wasn't going to let this ruin what she had worked so hard for. She had faced worse, and she wasn't going to back down now. The next morning, Sophia arrived at the training facility earlier than usual. She had made a promise to herself. She wasn't going to be just another player on the team. She was going to be one of the best. She was already at a disadvantage in the eyes of some of the others, so the only way forward was to prove herself beyond any doubt. She was on the field before the coaches had even arrived, practicing her dribbles, her sprints, her shooting. The sun was barely rising, the air crisp, but she didn't care. Every movement, every step, every kick had to be perfect. By the time the rest of the team arrived, she was already drenched in sweat. The other players watched her as they stepped onto the field, some with curiosity, others with mild annoyance. One of the boys, the same one who had tripped her earlier, scoffed. "Trying too hard, aren't you?" Sophia didn't even look at him. "If you're not trying hard, what are you doing here?" A few players chuckled at her response, and the boy scowled but said nothing. As training began, she noticed the shift. The resistance was still there, but it was cracking. Some of the teammates who had ignored her before had started passing to her in scrimmages. The coach had begun calling on her more often. The same boy who had mocked her earlier even begrudgingly nodded after she pulled off a slick move past him. By the end of the session, she was exhausted but satisfied. As she walked off the field, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see the assistant coach. "You work hard," he said simply. Sophia nodded. "It's the only way to get better." He smiled. "Keep it up. You're going to go far." As she showered and changed, her phone buzzed. She braced herself before checking the screen, expecting another cruel message. But this time, it was different. "Respect. You're proving yourself out there." She stared at the message for a moment, unsure how to feel. Was it from one of the teammates who had doubted her? Maybe. Either way, it meant something. That evening, Raphael took her out for a small celebration. Nothing fancy, just their favorite local diner where they used to go after her early football games as a child. As they ate, he watched her closely. "You're different," he said suddenly. Sophia raised an eyebrow. "In what way?" "You carry yourself differently now. You know you belong." She thought about that for a moment. He was right. She had spent so much of her life feeling like she had to prove herself, like she had to fight to be seen. And she still did, but now she didn't feel like she was fighting alone. The next day at training, Ronaldo showed up. The team was in the middle of warm-ups when he walked onto the field, and within seconds, everyone's attention was on him. The coach called for a break, and Ronaldo made his way towards Sophia with a smile. "Look at you," he said. "How's it been?" Sophia grinned, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Tough, but worth it." He nodded. "Good. That's the way it should be." The other players were watching, trying to act casual, but failing miserably. Ronaldo noticed and smirked. "What? You guys don't want to play?" The team scrambled into action, eager to have a chance to train with the superstar. For the next hour, Ronaldo played alongside them, giving tips, offering advice, and most of all, making sure Sofia knew he was watching. At the end of the session, he pulled her aside. "You're doing great," he said. Sofia exhaled. "Still some people who don't think I belong." Ronaldo tilted his head. "So, prove them wrong. Every single day. Make it so clear that they have no choice but to respect you." She nodded, taking his words to heart. Before leaving, Ronaldo called for everyone's attention. "All right, listen up," he said. "Sofia's here for a reason. She's earned this, and I expect to see all of you treating her as an equal because she's proving she belongs." There was silence for a moment. Then slowly, one by one, the players nodded. As Ronaldo walked away, Sofia felt something shift. It wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about something bigger. That night, as she lay in bed, she smiled. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every kid who had ever been told they didn't belong. And she wasn't going to stop. The days turned into weeks, and Sofia continued to push herself harder than ever. Every training session was a battle, but she was winning. The murmurs of doubt that had once surrounded her began to fade, replaced by quiet respect. Some of her teammates still weren't fully on her side, but it no longer mattered. She wasn't playing for their approval. She was playing for herself, for her future, for every moment she had dreamed of stepping onto a professional pitch. One evening after practice, Rafael met her at the field. He watched as she finished a set of sprints, her face determined, her breathing heavy. "You don't stop, do you?" he said, shaking his head with a smile. Sofia grinned. "Not until I get where I'm going." He handed her a bottle of water. "Well, you might want to take a break and check your phone." She frowned, pulling it out of her bag. Dozens of notifications filled the screen. Messages, missed calls, alerts from social media. Confused, she opened one of them. And then her heart nearly stopped. Ronaldo had posted about her. A video clip from their last training session played on his account, showing Sofia skillfully dodging defenders and scoring a goal. The caption read, "Remember her name. She's going to change the game." Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments. Thousands of people from around the world reacting, supporting her, cheering her on. Rafael chuckled, watching her expression. "Guess you're famous now." Sofia was speechless. She had always wanted to be recognized for her talent, but she never imagined something like this. That night, she barely slept. Messages from journalists, football scouts, and even players she admired kept pouring in. Some were invitations to trials. Others were just words of encouragement. But the one that stood out the most was a personal message from Ronaldo himself. "Keep going. This is just the beginning." The next morning, she arrived at training to a different atmosphere. The tension that had once surrounded her was gone. Players who had ignored her before now greeted her with nods. The boy who had tripped her during her first week finally passed her the ball without hesitation. During the scrimmage, she played with a confidence she had never felt before. Every touch was precise, every move calculated. She wasn't just proving herself anymore, she was leading. After practice, the head coach called her over. "You've got scouts coming next week," he said. "Big ones." Her breath caught. "For real?" He nodded. "You've been making waves. Keep playing like this, and you won't just be training with us. You'll be playing at the highest level." As she walked off the field, the weight of it all settled in. She had fought, she had endured, and now she was on the brink of something huge. That evening, she stood outside under the stars, holding Ronaldo's jersey in her hands. It wasn't just a gift anymore. It was a symbol of everything she had survived, of every battle she had won. She took a deep breath, feeling the night air on her skin. This was just the beginning, and she was ready for whatever came next.